And we are here at the fabulous Fairmont Miramar Hotel, and we have been playing new games. What have you been playing today?
I've been playing The Evil Within, which is Shinji Mikami's new game. Shinji Mikami, of course, of Resident Evil fame, and then I thought I would be playing a Resident Evil for 2014, but I came out of the demo thinking that I perhaps played a Silent Hill for 2014 instead. Even though it has some things in common with Resident Evil, I felt like this is way more psychological and way more sort of, I mean, even the title says it, Evil Within, and the logo has a big brain on it. So I'm not really sure what I played, but I'm not sure. I don't think it's the real. It's our reality anyway, that what we're playing. So it's one of those sort of very Japanese sort of inside psychology and looking at a lot of cool things. But I should say that what was interesting was we got to play Chapter 4 and Chapter 8. No context. And the story was not spoiled in any way. So I can't spoil the story for you, because I don't know anything about the story. So I basically just played it, and it was edited versions of the chapters, so there's not too much of the sort of the bigger story told. Of course, everyone knows that it started out with this thing where a cop came to a mental hospital, and people had died there. There was just a bloodbath, and that's how the game kicks off. And the Chapter 4 that I played was set in, let's see, it was set in like an hospice, what's the name of it? And in the beginning we caught up with this doctor who's missing a patient, and we're gonna try and look for him, and we go around, and then it's opened up in a fairly open environment where we got to do a little exploring on our own, but then it turned into more of a linear action-based level. So that was sort of more like a Resident Evil game, if you will, pretty much sneaking around. I heard some comparison to The Last of Us, because you do a lot of sort of sneaking, and you throw bottles and that sort of thing that you know from The Last of Us. But it plays really well, and there's a lot of variation in the combat. You've got a lot of sort of crafting things to do, and you got something called the Agony Crossbow, which you build bolts from things that you pick up in environments. There's a lot of traps and things like that, so you can sort of you can take materials from these traps and find them around the environments and build new different bolts, and they have different things. There's like electricity. There's things that are like explosive, and you can set up traps by shooting an arrow and then luring an enemy towards you. And there's a lot of things there that you can play around with. That's very interesting.
Right. What about the difficulty? They have been boasting that they are gonna bring survival back to the horror.
Yeah.
Is that? Do you think that's accurate?
There was 4 difficulty mode levels in the and only the 2 lowest ones were playable, and I think they probably made them a little bit easier anyway, because we're journalists and we don't like to die all the time. But I died quite a few times because the game doesn't really hold you. It doesn't tell you what to do in certain situations, so you're gonna die trying to do something that you think is right, but you don't know that you're not doing the right thing. And so there's a lot of those kind of where you have to figure out what am I really supposed to be doing here. And there was one instance, for instance, where there's sort of like it's not really a boss fight, but you're following this sort of ghost-like thing, and you're taken to a new reality, and the people that the doctor and the patient that you just met up with, there's just a corridor behind you, and when you try walking to it, you get to the same door, and you go into that door, and then there's stuff that happens there, and what happens is that there's a room full of a lot of traps. And the first instinct is to just, I'll take all the materials and I'll be able to buy bolts or use them to craft bolts. But then all of a sudden there's like 10, 12 creatures that spawn from some sort of blood that flows out from this guy that you've been following. And you realize that maybe I should have kept those traps, and I would have been able to lure them in there. And that sort of thing. So you do really have to sort of learn by trial and error a lot in that sense. Those kind of moments are really intense because you don't really, there's not a lot of ammunition. Obviously, that's sort of a staple of this genre. You have your shotgun, you have your pistol, you have that crossbow thing that you can build, and you got your knife. But you don't have a lot of ammunition, and there's not a lot of it lying around either. So it's you have to make use of what's there and traps, and sometimes it's better to hide, and sometimes it's better to run. But certain enemies you won't be able to kill, and a lot of the enemies when you shoot them, they don't die, so you have to burn them with a match, and of course you only have a limited amount of matches, so it gets to a point where you're always a little bit nervous. Do you have a match? Can I spend this match on burning this enemy, or should I not do it? Or there's always that sort of thing in the back of your mind. I always burn them because it feels best. But I think they were also a little bit generous with that kind of thing in this demo. But that sort of reminds me a little bit about Dark Souls, that sort of thing.
Yeah, that was pretty much. I got a little bit of that vibe that maybe a little bit Dark Souls, and like it's an interesting mix of like there's a little bit Resident Evil and Silent Hill and Dead Souls, and like that's a real mix of franchises that's been successful. So, but I mean, probably the most important question is: was it really scary? Or was it?
I jumped high. It was funny because they really set up the thing, like they'd section it off with dark things, and if you had any problems, you had a lamp that you could blink so someone could come in and help you. But there were certainly scary moments, and there was one time when there was something really intense, and someone walked by me and brushed me on the back, and I just jumped up. So that's a good sign that they're doing something right. But there's certainly a lot of tension. There's a lot of gore in it as well. So if you're scared by like the meaty sort of something is living on the walls kind of thing, you'll find a lot of that. And there's I mean, also like if we get to the second chapter that I played, chapter 8, where you're at you get to this mansion that's central to the story, but we're not really told why. But somehow this main character recognizes this place, although he's never been there before. Yeah, so this place is sort of a center of experiments, and you get to basically there's a puzzle where you have to open a door with liquids, and what you have to do is that you have to go to various rooms where there's a brain that has been dissected and tested on, and you have to stick a needle in the right spot. Yes, and yes, and you get this whole story of this deranged person who's been doing these experiments, and the doctor who's been helping them. But you're at the same time you're like, if I stick the needle in the wrong place in the brain, I'm losing health. Is there something there going on? Yeah, what's going on here? Is that a hint? Something? I don't know. But this level was more sort of puzzle based. There's a lot of puzzles and things you had to pick up from one place and go to another place and go and so. And there was really no hand holding, so you had to figure out what you were supposed to do. And what was interesting there is in this level, one of the enemies that you encountered earlier on as well, he sort of starts to show up randomly. You can't kill him. He's just like some sort of specter or something. And there's an echo like a blue echo that comes towards you from the direction he's coming from. And the first time I didn't figure out like what does that mean. You have to run in the opposite direction, obviously. But I ran towards the door, which was right towards where he's coming from, and I opened it, and there he was, and that was a freaky moment for sure. But it was nice that they had this random element, because otherwise it's like you sort of get used to the fact that, okay, I cleared this puzzle, there's probably going to spawn an enemy behind me, and there's going to be noises from there, and blah blah blah. You know, of course, we should talk about the sounds, because sounds is really important. They were very keen to point out that, oh, the audio mixing isn't final, blah 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 blah, but it still scared the hell out of me. And there's a lot of piano playing in it, and a lot of sort of eerie melodies that are going on, and the sound of the wind, and you know, things like that. But on the negative side, then technically looking at it, it doesn't really look all that good, and they've gone for this grimy, grainy look, which doesn't lend itself well to screenshots. So if you've been looking at screenshots, you probably think the game looks kind of not that good. Although there's a lot of movement in there, so when you walk around, there's outside there's the branches and everything, there's leaves flying around, so there's a lot of things going on like that. But it from a graphical fidelity point of view, it's not top notch really. But I don't think it really matters in this case, because it's meant to look grimy, and it's sort of a little bit aged almost. So I think it's fine, and after getting used to how it looked, it didn't really matter. And they're also using a lot of different effects to show that you're in different sort of states of reality or things. There was an instance where it's all black and white and very, very grainy, for instance, and then you're pulled back into another layer of reality, or whatever it is we're doing, or another section of the brain, or whatever's going on here. But so, yeah.
Well, all in all, it certainly sounds interesting. But any final thoughts? Is it a worthy successor to all these well-established horror franchises, and of course Shinji?
Yeah, I mean, I think that it's interesting because it's not just following in the footsteps of a Resident Evil. It's doing something a little bit different, and it feels fresh in that way, even though it lends a lot of things. And I also thought a lot about what's it called, American Horror Story. That was I think that has also been a big inspiration on this game, and a lot of people who played it also felt like, oh my god, that guy in the basement of that asylum who was doing a lot of experiments, that feels like feels a lot like that. But yeah, I'm excited for it. It's still a lot of question marks, of course, but first, what I'm really coming away with is that I'm dying to find out what's really going on. And from what I hear, one playthrough will probably not be enough to solve everything. There's going to be a lot of question marks left after that. So interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. Right. Well, we'll see that in the autumn, I guess. Then.
Am I going crazy? Will you be able to live with yourself knowing what I'm going to make you do?